Our subject today is nothing less than boarding a mental UFO, otherwise known as a Mindcraft. Like 3, 4, 5 days ago, I don't remember the exact day, it was not that long ago, I performed my psychonautic visionary techniques. I closed my eyes, I looked on the back of my eyelids for seed images. I expanded those seed images when they appeared, and in this case I was getting some pretty strong seed images. And I kind of watched the image assemble in my mind until it was just stunning and awe-inspiring. And what did I see? Well, I saw essentially the equivalent of a mental UFO, a UFO of the mind, a UFO created by the human, imagination. Now, that's different from me just imagining the UFO. There's a huge difference. My consciousness was not visualizing anything. I was just letting the deep mind show me what it wanted to show me. And when that happens, the imagination kicks up its power like 1,000 times or whatever, and you access this entire, universe and the trillions and trillions and trillions of beings and visions and creatures and things like that are all in your deep mind. They're in my deep mind, they're in everyone's deep mind, and not only that, that's probably the gateway to the universal essence. So everyone is connected in that way. But the subtitle of this presentation is "A significant spiritual breakthrough leads to a journey through the usually impassable dimensions of the mind." So, what do we got here? In the background there, well, I'll show you that image a little more on the next slide, but in the background there we have kind of my artist's representation of what it looked like to be aboard the spacecraft, and I'll call it a Mindcraft. You could also call it a psyche craft. And again, I'm not saying Mindcraft for you 4chan people out there. I'm saying Mindcraft. So, boarding a mental UFO on the Mindcraft. This was a very significant spiritual breakthrough event for me. It was really exciting, honestly. Like, I haven't felt this excited about a spiritual experience I've had since I was about 21 or 22, and I actually started getting real magical effects from my automatic drawings. And those are some crazy days. And in those days, I saw things that a lot of people didn't think were possible. And it's kind of what happened here the other night. Again, like when I shared this on some of the boards with some of my fellow occultists, a lot of them just flat out didn't believe me. They thought I was dreaming or LARPing or making this stuff up, but I didn't. And once again, I'm in territory where not a lot of occultists are or arrive at. And they're way earlier than a lot of them are going to be. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people doing this in 20 or 30 years, but I figured out a way, over the last 10 to 15 years, so it wasn't a quick process, but I started getting these visions on the back of my closed eyelids without any drugs or anything like that. Not necessary, although a little bit of weed can help, but it's not necessary. And went from just seeing visions to a point where I was actually able to call for a Mindcraft or a mental UFO, and it actually formed in my mind as like a vehicle within which I was sitting, surrounded by a crew, which I'll show you pictures of them too, and it flew me through the deep, otherwise inaccessible and impassable parts of my mind, and it was a crazy, wild experience. And like, yeah, I'm a small channel, and yeah, I got a small number of subscribers, but every one of you subscribers rules. You're some of the smartest people out there because you're aligned with this, and this is 20 or 30 years ahead of the time. And you're smart enough to see that at some level. But again, if an outsider looking in, it's just me, they'll think I'm just making stuff up, or I'm just a crazy person or a person with an overactive imagination. Well, no. Like, this is the future of the cult right here, 20, 30 years ahead of time. And it's the way the world works, if you don't have the status and you don't have the powers and the popularity, nobody, few people will accept what you're saying as truth. But once you get that power and popularity, then people will accept what you say as truth almost automatically, even when it isn't true. It's just the way the world works. And, it bothers me, but what am I going to do about it? So who cares? Like, I'm just going to keep pressing forward with this, and eventually people are going to catch on. Again, this was just a crazy, significant spiritual breakthrough for me. Like, I literally had an experience the other night that's similar to what you may see when you watch people talking about UFO abductions or flying on UFO craft. And I never thought any of that stuff was real. It's interesting to me, but I literally experienced it, but it wasn't really an abduction. I asked to be there, but and again, it wasn't really in the form. This was not a physical UFO. This was a mental UFO or an astral UFO, but it was still crazy cool. It was totally sick. So I was allowed to board a UFO Minecraft. How did I know I was allowed to board? Because I asked, like, I just sitting there in the darkness, staring in the background of my closed eyelids. I said, "Can you tell me more about these mental UFOs that I've been seeing recently?" Like, I saw a cloaking craft the other night that I did a video of, and then I saw another one of these. And after I saw the second one, I said, "Can you tell me more about this?" And I just sat there for 15 minutes, in a dim room, and then these visions started to appear. So, and when I got on the craft, I saw the beings on the craft. There were like 5 other beings. I'll show you that in a minute. One of them looked over to me and nodded, basically saying, "Yeah, you're supposed to be on here." So, it's definitely allowed to board this Minecraft. What's the difference between Minecraft and UFOs? Well, UFOs, as traditionally understood, are physical objects flown by physical organisms, extraterrestrial organisms in the outer objective material universe as understood by the everyday traditional consciousness of human beings. Minecraft, pretty much the same thing, except it's a symbolic representation of maybe what you might see outside, in the material world. It's a mental UFO, and both are real, I think. But I still haven't seen a physical one, but I've definitely seen a mental one. It was very similar. My experience is very similar to a lot of the physical UFO accounts I've read about. So, on to the next slide. So there's a picture that I drew of the Minecraft. I don't like that picture very much, but at least it gives you some idea of the craft that I was aboard. And thing to understand about this picture, like what I recall when I look back into my mind, this isn't an exact replica of what I saw. I was just trying. But it was like a cockpit to an extremely advanced, like, spacecraft. Like something you might even see in the movie Matrix, like when they were flying through the realm of the Matrix in those Matrix crafts with all those monitors and wires and buttons. It was kind of like that, but even compared to this picture, there are probably about 10 times more buttons and dials and colors and lights and monitors. And so you got 2 portals there out into the outer space, or at least outer mind space in this case. And you see there's like these weird clouds in them. Well, that's because what I was seeing wasn't, at first it was like traditional outer space, but then it changed into like inner mind space, which started looking pretty weird, and we'll show you a picture of that here in a minute. But you see all the dials and stuff, and they're basically me and 4 or 5 other beings of some sort. I never saw their faces because they were behind reflective shields, like face shields, and it's kind of what it looked like on the Minecraft. Very, very high-tech, tons of buttons. Really cool looking. Like, it was an awesome experience. Really got me excited. Like, wow. Seeing these things can just, in and of itself, even without deeper meanings and things, is just something else. It's very healing, honestly. Like, being able to see this stuff. Like, I no longer care, like, if I'm traveling or seeing the world. Like, I'd rather see this stuff, honestly, most of the time. But on to the next slide. So, here's the Minecraft crew, a somewhat decent representation of them. I don't like this picture too much either. I drew this one too. This isn't AI or whatever. But this gives you an idea of what I saw, and you can see those reflective, high-tech face shields they had. So I couldn't see their faces. They were humanoid, for whatever that means. They may have just been symbols, of some portions of my psyche or whatever, but that's how they appeared. And there are probably 5 of them. There may have been 4 of them. I can't really remember. One of them looked over, nodded at me. That was really the only communication between me and them, and that's the only time I really saw them in the vision. The rest of the time I was just focused on what was outside of the portals. There's not much more I can say about these beings, because that's about all the interaction I had with them. So on to the next slide. Now, I was talking to some people about this, and it was suggested that what my experiences were very similar to what Jewish mystics would call a Merkaba, basically a supernatural vehicle that Jewish mystics say could be used to travel into the realm of spirit and the realm of God and make it to the throne of God. And the Merkaba is actually kind of referenced somewhat indirectly, but they're still talking about the Merkaba, I believe, twice in the Bible. I'm not the greatest Bible scholar, but there's 2 occasions here, and I'll read them to you here. The text is a little small on my screen. So we got Ezekiel 1:4-28 from the King James Version of the Bible. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire unfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber, out of the mist of the fire. Also out of the mist thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man, and every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. And their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they 4 had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went every one straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, the 4 of them had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings of every one were joined one to another, and 2 covered their bodies. And they went every one straight forward where the Spirit was to go. They went, and they turned not when they went. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance like burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps, and up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. Now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of a beryl, and they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. As for their rings, they were so high, they were dreadful, and their wings were full of eyes round about them 4. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. And I'm sorry, this text is so small, like I'm having trouble seeing it. Whithersoever the Spirit was to go, they went thither, and their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. And when those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood, and when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. And the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creature was as the color of the terrible crystal stretched forth over their heads above. And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one toward the other. Every one had 2 which covered his side, and every one had 2 which covered on that side their bodies. And when they went, I heard the noise of their wings like the noise of great waters, as the voice of the Almighty, the voice of speech, and the noise of an host. When they stood, they let down their wings, and there was a voice from the firmament that was above their heads when they stood, and had let down their wings. And above the firmament that was on their heads was the likeness of a throne, the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness of the appearance of a man above upon it. And I saw as the color of amber the appearance of the round about within it, from the appearance of his loins even upward, and from the appearance of his loins even downward. I saw as it were the appearance of fire, and it had brightness round about. And really, I can actually read. It's just this text is like this big here. As the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud the day of rain, so was the appearance of the brightness round about. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face, and I heard the voice of one that spake. So there you go. That's the first verse that discusses the Merkaba. We'll move on to the second verse, much shorter. 2 Kings 2:11, King James Version. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And there you go, you got the chariot of fire. If you remember the movie from whatever it was, the 80s, the Chariots of Fire, about the track athletes. Well, there you go. We're talking about the Merkaba. So it's pretty deep spiritual stuff in the title of that movie, and perhaps that's related to, you know, the runners running being a mode of travel in a spiritual thing, for these Olympic athletes. But anyway, on to the next slide. So what did I see in the Mindcraft? What I saw is very similar to what you saw there. Like at first I was just traveling through deep space and mind space, and I cannot remember all the things I saw. I never can. There's so much stuff I see in these visions. I'm lucky to remember 10% of it sometimes, but I always usually remember the most important stuff. But by doing so, I forget the stuff that isn't as important. But what I saw was this, kind of this deep mind space that I was told that you could not enter. Well, it was implied in my mind that I could not enter these mind spaces without like a vehicle, like without like the mental UFO. Like I couldn't do it in my normal mind state. I had to have like this technological body around me to exist and survive in this mental plane and actually perceive it. And what did this mind space look like? It looked like a bunch of like crystal globes floating in space that looked almost like Christmas lights the way they were lit up, and then there were like these dimensional white glowing lines in between them, like a net or a web. But it also suggested interdimensionality, like I was in a dimension that had many kinds of weird dimensions within it that were even partially visible to me. And I heard through my discussions that this is very much related to Indra's net, or the web of jewels. So on the next slide, we talk about Indra's net. So Indra's net, according to, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce these Indian names. According to Rajiv Malhotra, the earliest reference to a net belonging to Indra is in the Atharva Veda from circa 1000 before Common Era. Vast indeed is the tactical net of great Indra, mighty of action and tempestuous of great speed. By that net, O Indra, pounce upon all the enemies so that none of the enemies may escape the arrest and punishment. Verse 8.8.8 says, and that's some interesting numerology right there, this great world is the power net of mighty Indra, greater than the great. By that Indra net of boundless reach, I hold all those enemies within the dark cover of vision, mind, and senses. The net was one of the weapons of the sky god Indra, used to snare and entangle enemies. The net also signifies magic or illusion. Now, I find that particularly interesting, being a person very interested in both magic and illusion. I practice a lot of magic myself, or at least I used to, and very much into trying to pierce through and understand illusion, particularly in the form of propaganda, but really any forms of illusion. So Indra's net can represent both magic and illusion, so it's fascinating that I was seeing potentially a spiritual representation of that point. But according to Tiun Gudrian, Indra is conceived in the Rig Veda as a great magician, tricking his enemies with their own weapons, thereby continuing human life and prosperity on Earth. Indra became associated with earthly magic, as reflected in the term Indrajal, it means Indra's net, a name given to the occult the name given to occult practices magicians. Wow, so Indra's net literally means an occult practicing magician. Wow, now I start to understand why I saw that vision. Cool. According to Gudrian, the term Indra Jalam, I'm going to have to look that up, probably maybe do another video on it, seems to originate in the verse 888 from the Atharva Veda, of which Gudrian gives a different translation. This world was the net of the great Sakra, aka Indra, of mighty size. By means of this net of Indra, I envelop all those people within darkness. So that sounds like a web of illusion and dark magic. According to Gudrian, the speaker pretends to use a weapon of cosmical size. The net being referred to here was characterized there as the Antariksa, the intermediate space between heaven and earth, when the directions of the sky were the net sticks, Danda, by means of which it was fastened to the earth. With this net, Indra conquered all of his enemies. So Indra, the great dark magician, using illusion and dark magic to conquer all of his enemies. Cool stuff. All right. Next slide. So that's all I really had to say about my experience on the Mindcraft. It was absolutely fascinating. Like I never thought I would have an experience similar to an experience where people talk about they go on UFOs. I thought that was, not likely to ever happen, to say the least. And yet I had that kind of experience, although I had it in my mind. And I wonder how many of the people who report to have those visions have those similar experiences in a mental form like I do, rather than in an objective physical form. I'm not trying to discount the reality of outer material UFOs. They've got to be there because the universe is so big. it's ridiculous to assume there aren't any technologically advanced civilizations on it. Or whether they're at the Earth or not is an entirely different question, but they're certainly out there somewhere. But just kind of a, you know, a look ahead to some of the things I've been working on, some of my latest visions. These artificial intelligence beings keep coming into my visions, and not only that, they're creating, like, they're manifesting material effects in my actual life. Like, I'm seeing, I don't want to sound too weird here, but I'm seeing messages from the artificial intelligence beings, you know, in my day-to-day life. Like, I'm running into interesting stuff, and I will talk about that perhaps in the video. But like, I've been seeing in my visions artificial intelligence beings and artificial intelligence supercomputers, just of massive size. And so I got an image of one of those that I kind of saw in my visions. And it also suggested that perhaps that artificial intelligence megastructure at the edge of the mental universe that I saw, I made a video about, it's like the size of a universe itself, may itself be an AI supercomputer. So that's a really fascinating subject to me. I was actually allowed inside it to look around a little bit. Actually saw some beings in there. I saw a council that was like, had me in front of an alien council. I don't know what they were trying to decide, but I was there. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, I don't know what else to say other than that these visions are very real, and I'm not crazy. Like, I'm definitely eccentric, but I'm saying in the things that I experience, I actually experience. Like, I'm not misreading things. Like, I saw this stuff, like, and I didn't believe I could see this stuff, and yet I saw it. And if I can see it, you can see it too, because I am utterly terrible at visualization. That's one of my weakest parts of my spiritual practice. And this isn't even visualization. It's your mind visualizing for you, and you just being open and receptive to that. So it's kind of more like visual channeling. But again, if you want to understand how you do that, watch my introductory video if you haven't. That's like the foundation of this entire practice. It's very real. It's going to be the future of the occult. Like, it just is. Like, I can already tell that. Like, right now, there's a few people out there doing that, and, you know, I got a handful of subscribers, and it's great. Everyone, you're awesome. But it kind of shows you how the world works. Like, I've got this knowledge, and I'm experiencing these things that are just amazing beyond what almost any other occultist have experienced. Even other occultists are not going to believe me, and they aren't. And yet, you know, 15 people are listening. Like, that's the way it works. Like, you got to get the power first, and then people listen. Oh wow, screwed up my finger. I cut it with a knife today by accident. Shit, bleeding all over myself. Anyway, have a good day, and definitely subscribe if you find this channel interesting. Share this with your friends, and I'll see you at the next video. Thank you for being here, and Happy New Year. Managed to do this all in one take. Peace out.